Customer behavior in services. In this module, we'll look at 4 different concepts: perception, expectation, encounter, and satisfaction. For this particular video, we'll look at customer expectation, and under customer expectation, we'll look at 3 different concepts: levels of expectation, zone of tolerance, and factors influencing customer expectation of services. So what exactly is customer expectation? Expectation is more like a reference point against which a service is delivered. So the quality of service is measured against these reference points. So how are these reference points even developed? These reference points can be based on 2 different levels of customer expectation: the desired service as well as the adequate service. And in between this, we also have the predicted service. 2 primary: desired service, adequate services, and predicted service. When we talk about desired service, when we take up any service, whether it is a telecom service, whether you are using a restaurant service or hospital, we expect some desired level of output from them. That is the desired service. This is fixed. This remains fixed and does not vary. At a bare minimum, we expect some kind of delivery from the service provider, and that is called the adequate service. In between this is the actual service that we get, because we know that service has a variability component. Not all services remain fixed. Variability component because of multiple number of reasons. Service providers will not deliver the same amount of service because they are dependent on many factors, the service personnel or the situation and many others, which is something we are well aware of. The degree of provision of service between the desired service and adequate service is also called as the zone of tolerance. This zone of tolerance can vary. It can actually reduce or increase based on our expectation of the adequate service level. Whether the level of adequate service is high, then our zone of tolerance is less. If it is more, then our zone of tolerance is actually, if it's less, that means zone of tolerance also will increase. Zone of tolerance is more of a bearability factor. Let's define each of this in one-liners. Desired service level, it's nothing but a service that I wish for, a wished for level of service quality that customer believes can and should be delivered, which will not change. An adequate service level, minimum acceptable level of service. Predicted service level that a customer believes the firm will actually deliver. Zone of tolerance, acceptable range of variations in service delivery. For example, if we are actually engaging with a consulting firm, HR consulting firm, which actually provides recruitment services, and say I am looking out for a job and I engage with them, my expectation, what would be my expectation of a service? That I expect that they ensure to provide me with the relevant job that I am looking at. That is the desired level of service, which won't change. I'm looking at a particular kind of job, and to give me that right job in the right place, with the right amount of salary, which I am actually expecting, because this is what you wish for. But there are factors which can sometimes change. There could be a market crash. There could be COVID, which has just happened, a pandemic kind of a scenario, and there's a lockdown, and things happen. Various things happen, either controllable or uncontrollable. As a result of which, I cannot have that same level of service. I know that the threshold will actually change, because the minimum I can come down to probably this level of acceptance, that is the etiquette level. I may say this is probably the job I was looking at, but the HR consulting firm, because of the situation, they came and provided me with a different kind of a job, which is not what I was expecting. So that's the minimum acceptable level of service. And what they provided me is nothing but the predicted service level that customer believes the firm will actually deliver in the current situation. But you can go down to a minimum level, a bottom level, which is kind of acceptable to the customer. So that is the difference between desired as well as the etiquette service level. In between that is the zone of tolerance, the extent to which the customers recognize and are willing to accept the variation of service across providers or across employees of the same provider. These employees are nothing but, when you talk about employees of the same provider, the people who actually provide the service to you, because that's how services are delivered. Now, zone of tolerance also will vary. Okay, you different customers will possess different zone of tolerances. For example, let's say you're waiting in line for a restaurant. Okay, there's it's self-service. A lot of orders are being taken, and you're waiting in line. Now, based on your level, based on if you are actually getting in a hurry to reach some other place, and you would expect a shorter wait time, as a result of which your threshold level or your zone of tolerance will reduce. But if you are somebody who's relaxed, calm, doesn't have any other work, and you just come there because you want food to be eaten and you're fine with that particular waiting line, which means your zone of tolerance is high. So it can vary within customers, and the actual performance, uh, how you perceive the actual performance, the customer, is if I am expecting a desired service and I get beyond that desired service, then I will be surprised, and that is customer delight. Where if an organization is able to provide the service, provider is able to provide a service beyond customer's expectation. If he provides as per my expectation, I am satisfied. But if he provides the service below my minimum tolerance level, that is below my adequate service expectation, that I'll be dissatisfied, or the customer will be frustrated and disgusted. So the zone of tolerance also, in terms of, is very important, this concept, because it actually kind of determines the actual performance and how service providers can actually measure them based on how they are providing to the customer. But understand this, desired service level, understanding this is very paramount importance to the marketer. But the adequate service level sometimes is, there are situations based on which it is uncontrollable, we cannot really control it. What are the factors which determine the range of zone of tolerance? Customer differences, as I just said, it could be based on the customer's personality, his attitude, and it could be basically broad or narrow, as I explained earlier. It could be, you know, a zone of tolerance would decrease if, when you have, like, it could become narrow. It could actually also be broadened based on how I'm actually able to, based on my own uh, tolerance level, my own tolerance level of the and my expectation of that particular service. As in the example I've given about the waiting line, based on price, how does price make a difference? Generally, when we look at price, when a product is really, not a product, sorry, a service is really high priced, customers tend to be less tolerant if a poor service is provided. If it is really high priced, I expect good quality service to be provided. But if a poor service is being provided to me, what happens? The zone of tolerance will decrease. So price will actually determine whether the range increases or range reduces. Situation, same, airport waiting line. Again, if your flight is at say 3 p.m. and you are actually asked to reach there by check in by 1 p.m. So it's an international flight, not a domestic flight. You have to reach there, say 2.5 hours before. So 12:30 p.m. you have to be arrived there. The flight is at 3 p.m. But you have arrived late. You arrived like by 1 p.m. You will be in a hurry to rush through the. If there's a higher waiting line, you'll be in a hurry through pass through the initial check-in counter. Your range zone of tolerance is going to be low. But if you have arrived much early, if you arrive say by around 12 p.m. And you are not so pressed for time, then your zone of tolerance will actually be more. You don't mind going through slowly through the process because there's still time for your flight at 3 p.m. Also, in the based on nature and services, I've given flight example, the restaurant example may be very different. Say a fast food restaurant, based on the nature of service, you might expect it's fast food, so you might expect the services to be provided very quickly compared to a five-star hotel where you just go. The hotel experience is more important. Take your time in terms of experiencing the ambience of the hotel also. Now that we have understood the concept of zone of tolerance and the desired service, the etiquette service, and what is the predicted service level that customers believe the firm will actually deliver, the actual performance. Let's look at the factors influencing customer expectation of service. What are these factors which influence customer expectation of the service? In trying to understand the factors which influence the customer expectation, we have to understand the factors which actually influence the desired service level as well as the etiquette service level. So the factors which determine the level of desired service, one is personal need, which goes without saying, what customers require from the service. This actually comprises of the physical well-being as well as the psychological well-being of the customer, the social factor as well as the functional factor. Functional is more about what the service actually promises to deliver, the functional aspect. And if a service actually promised to deliver say Domino's pizza 15 minutes 20 minutes may if it does not arrive in 20 minutes or 30 minutes, then pizza is free. You expect that kind of promise to be met. So it's the functional aspect of it. Social aspect, it depends on customer with a very high social and dependency aspect based on his personality. Let's say you are booked into a hotel and your idea is just to stay there for 2 days because you've arrived in the city. But you might also expect that hotel to have some additional services being provided to you. Additional services like let's say it could have live music, maybe stand-up comedy, or maybe a dance floor where you could actually go and socialize with people. Something like that, you would actually expect it, additional expectation. So your desired level, your initial desired level also will vary based on your own personal factor, right? Based on what you are actually expecting out of it. Sorry. Your personal service philosophy. Personal service philosophy is something like, again, it could be your attitude towards the service. Uh, and based on your attitude towards the service, how should the service actually be conducted? Um, there's a very beautiful example, actually, your textbook states, which actually kind of gives an idea of what philosophy, service philosophy means. Let's say you have worked at a restaurant and you know what it means to be on the other side of the counter. You know what how customers actually perceive waiting and how fast services should actually be delivered to them. So you know that the wait line is a line which should actually be customers should be served as soon as possible. Where you have worked earlier, based on your experience, you understand that customers should not be kept waiting for a long period of time. But you have actually visited a different restaurant. You see that it does not work the same way as where the restaurant that you used to work in. So the entire your entire perception, your entire not perception, your entire philosophy has changed. You have a strong service philosophy as to how this should really work. That is how you build. Your attitude towards that service is already built based on your experience in the past, and this is how it should properly be conducted. And if that is not met, that basically changes your desired level of service. It does not change, but that is what determines your desired level of service. So derive service expectation. The next factor. This can be influenced by others in a group or customers who represent a group. What that means by, uh, let's say you are planning a vacation for your family. Now you are planning a vacation for family. There are other many dependent factors here. When you are planning a vacation for your family, it's not just you who are expecting something out of that vacation. There are many other members in your family who are also expecting something, some kind of expectation out of that particular vacation that you are going to be engaging with probably a vacation service provider. So when you are trying to uh, get a vacation service for your entire family, it will also be based on what they expect out of the service. So it's more derived. It's influenced also by others in a group, where you are actually the customer. You are the one who is basically going to choose the service for others, but they are also a part of influencing the service expectation. So that is one of the factors which basically influence the desired output from that particular service. Next, we'll look at the factors which determine the level of adequate service, the minimum tolerable level. Now, you need to understand the factors which affect the level of adequate service. These are something which are short term and which will actually tend to fluctuate more than the factors which affect the desired service. If you see the factors, you'll understand what I mean. Perceived service alternatives. Perceived service alternatives are nothing but, the word alternatives mentions it here. Uh, in a case where there are multiple service providers, there are other service providers, or in a case where you could actually do it yourself and need not have to go to a service. The service that comes to mind as an example is a salon service or personal grooming. You can actually go and get a face pack done, or a face mask done from a salon, or you can do it yourself. You can go and get a shave done from a salon, or you can even do it yourself. You can also buy products, you can buy relevant products and do it yourself. Now, when you actually have to determine the minimum level of service that is provided by this salon, you'll also might have visited other salons. You also probably are aware of what other salons are offering. Your expectation is based on what, if there are more alternatives. Generally, if there are more number of what you say alternatives, in which case your level of adequate service, that level actually is higher, because you expect it to be, and that level, when the level is higher, your zone of tolerance is actually less. Let's say in a situation in your area there is only one salon service provider, nobody else, no alternatives. Of course, you can do it yourself, but you don't want to do it yourself. You want to go there and get it done from the only salon service provider. In this case, your level of adequate service, the level is actually low, because there's nothing else you can expect. In this case, your zone of tolerance is high. I mean, larger zone of tolerance. It increases. Situational factors. Uncontrollable factors like natural disasters, rush hour, holiday season. Let's say your and these are temporary. Okay, situational factors are temporary. They're not necessary. They will always be there, because these things happen on a like for example, COVID pandemic has not, because of this, our etiquette level, minimum level actually has changed. Our level actually has reduced as we have become more tolerant in the case where we know that because of a pandemic, there are certain services which are not available. And even if it's available, post pandemic, when the lockdown opens up, we know that there's going to be a lot of rush for a particular service. If I'm going to a grocery store, or during lockdown times, there are very small window when which we could go out and shop and come back, 10 to 12, or say 6 to 9. And within that time, there's going to be a lot of people in the fish market or in the grocery market, say for any kind of, so forget about this. These are product. I'm talking about product sellers. Let's look at service people where services are provided. If you're visiting a bank, within 6 to 9, a lot of people are going to visit the banks, and or not 6 to 9, sorry, within 9 to 12 or something like that. You'll have to actually spend a lot more time. So these because of COVID pandemic, during holiday season, there's always a rush, and the resorts are generally overbooked. Prices are really high. Natural disasters, many things are not available. There's always less provision. There could also be personal emergencies from your side, personal emergency situations. For example, you have to reach office on time. There's some meeting, but there's been a car breakdown. You call the repair maintenance service. You expect him to come and repair the car as soon as possible. Your level of etiquette service, that level actually increases. Your tolerance is low. Any other period of time, it doesn't matter. You have a problem, you call the car guy, he comes, he fixes, even if it takes 2 3 days, you're okay with it. But right now, you have to go to a meeting and your car has broken down. You expect him to come, fix it as soon as possible, and go away. So this is one of the situational factors, which could be uncontrollable factors, and one of the uncontrollable also can be your own personal factors, not external, which has happened, like holidays external, natural disasters external, rush hour and pandemics, and all of that is external. Predicted service. Now, when we talk about predicted service, it's more like this is something that what is likely to happen during the exchange of the service. When you're actually experiencing the service, your predictability will vary. It's more of like a probability. You had a desired level. You were expecting something out of a service. You have an etiquette minimum expectation out of a service provider. But when you're during the service is being provided to you, let's say you're waiting in a line, and you know that when you're waiting in a line, initially you expected, when you came there to the restaurant, you were expecting probably within 15 minutes a dish will be served to you. But when you arrive there, and probably you have minimum level is, say, within 10 minutes, you are okay to come down to 10 minutes. Okay. Uh, Sorry, the other way around. 15 minutes you expect desired, and say it's going to take 20 minutes, you're ready to increase up to 20 minutes. But when you reach there, you come to know as and when the service is being provided, whether it is being fast, your predictability changes. Okay. You will actually get to understand the real level as to which you are likely to get. You believe you're likely to get. You see things are moving faster, you'll realize, oh, maybe I'm going to get it in, I expected 15 minutes, I'm ready to tolerate 20 minutes, but I'm going to get it in 10 minutes, I realize. Okay. So that's probably when it is happening, your prediction is actually it's changing, right? That is what it means. So higher the prediction, higher the level of etiquette service. Your level of etiquette service will also increase. That's why this is one of the factors which affects etiquette service, because this, based on what the customers believe are likely to get, it can vary. Next, we look at the sources of both desired and predicted service. We understand, yes, there is expectation, there is predicted, but what are the sources uh, which actually shape up you having this desired expectation, or a or that predict, when you have this predicted service, when you make that kind of probability or an assumption. it could be the explicit service promise made by the service provider, what they promise to you when you are basically uh, even before we understand this, it's more like to come to a conclusion. uh, the sources could be many, right? When I talk about sources, you understand in your mind what the sources could be. It could be shaped by many things. It could be shaped by when you, like, talk to a friend, when you look at advertisements, what, let's say a hotel is providing this kind of service, and basically you probably have visited there, your past experience, all of it. But those are the things what I'm going to talk about here. The explicit service promise, if somebody has told you, the organization or the service provider has told you, they say explicitly through an advertisement that this is what we provide. Let's say a Fair and Lovely cream says in 6 weeks we're going to make you fair, then that is an explicit promise they are making. Okay. But personal is when you go visit a store and a service person tells you, makes a promise to you, a salesperson makes it. That's a very personal promise. So an explicit promise could be personal as well as a non-personal message, which will actually affect your desired and predicted service. Implicit service promise, price. We expect higher price not product, services to be more hotel. If luxury hotel, we expect them to provide services accordingly because they are higher priced. And higher priced insurances, we expect them to give you a better coverage and have more cover in terms of operations covered, in terms of diseases covered. When we talk about and so the price factor is whatever tangible associations with a service. We know that service is intangible, but there are certain tangible associations with a service. What comes with a service also, we will expect that also according to the price. What a service provider provides us, the food that he puts on our table, if it's a posh hotel, it will vary accordingly. Word of mouth communication based on anybody, your friends, family, social networking sites. Based on that, word of mouth is self-explanatory. Based on the past experience, when you have gone visited a hotel, when you have used a salon service, based on, it could be of the same service provider, or maybe you have visited multiple service providers, so you have some kind of reference point against which you can compare. Or it can be different services even across industries. Sometimes we do cost cross comparison. Probably the same service provider, maybe he is into multiple things. Maybe I'm not able to get an example right now. Let's say X, there's a company X, and he also does salon service, he also does car wash service, also does hotel service. uh, if you have experienced one of their industry services, you probably expect the same from that brand or from that organization in another industry service, something like that. So that is all we have for this video. This last slide is basically summarizing all of that I explained. The desired service, the etiquette service, the zone of tolerance, range between both, and what basically are factors which affect the desired service: personal needs, personal service philosophy, derived service expectations. For the etiquette service, perceived service, alternative situational factors, and the predicted service. And sources of desired as well as predicted service: explicit service promises, implicit, word of mouth, and past experience. So it's more like a snapshot, visual snapshot for you to remember all that was in words earlier and explained with some examples to you. Thank you. We'll meet in the next video where we will talk about customer perception of a service.